So welcome everyone to our Suburban Action Week session about community engagement, our inclusive community engagement workshop. I'm Maggie Czerwinski from the Active Transportation Alliance, and my colleague Alex Perez is here. We're both advocacy managers at Active Trans. So just so you're aware of the program for today, after this at 2, we'll have a session with Christopher B. Burke Engineering on how a project gets built. So from design to construction. And then at 3 o'clock, we're doing an advocate gathering with Ride Illinois. So today, Alex and I will be reviewing like why is community engagement important? Why is it important for your advocacy? And who is most impacted by our transportation system? And then we'll walk you through creating a community engagement plan. And really this session is going to be a brainstorm session for you all. It's about it's about building community, and how do you collect input from or involve a broad range of groups and individuals, and then how do you elevate underrepresented voices so that their ideas and their needs are incorporated into decision making. And this a lot of this advice, like, we don't want to overwhelm you, but we do want you to just like get all those ideas out there. Who is in your community? So you just have a nice big list. And it's okay to start small. And also something you could do is, bring that list to your municipality to be like, you know what, when we have plans in the future, look at all of these groups that we need to be engaging, because like as advocates, we know you're all volunteers, most of you putting in time for this, but it helps for you to just see who's out there to really build your campaign and help your community. So just some housekeeping: keep yourself muted when you're not speaking, and we're recording this, so we'll share this workshop with all of you later, and use the chat box if you do have any questions, or you could unmute yourself. So question for you all, and use the chat box if you will. Just think about why is community engagement important? Why is it important to build community, to involve the full community in decision making? So if you have any thoughts, please add them to the chat. It might be different ideas or different reasons in different communities, but we have a list of some things. So, and there's plenty more, but why is this important? It helps you tap into local knowledge, people that know, that have unique needs, that live. Everyone travels, so everyone has an understanding of some issues that are going on in your community, and with that local knowledge, you'll be able to more likely assess the problem and create effective solutions. And then it also just involving more people from different backgrounds empowers them. It builds relationships, it makes a stronger community, and it's by involving more voices, it just helps you see your blind spots. It's an opportunity to discuss concerns, maybe issues that weren't on your radar. It can build community trust, and when you do have a lot of community support for a project, elected officials are more likely to move it forward, and you'll more likely see action taken and results, your transportation environment changing. So just a statement that involving a broad range of groups and individuals in your community and your advocacy efforts will make your campaigns more inclusive and more effective. And if anyone has any other thoughts about this, we'd love to hear, like, please add anything to the chat. And now I'm going to turn it over to Alex.
Thank you, Maggie. This is another question that we wanted to open up to the audience. And if you want to kind of just write in the chat box, in your community, who do you think is most impacted by the high cost of car ownership and limited mobility options? So we just want to get like a list starting of who you think is most impacted in your community. And we'll just spend like a minute or two, then continue on. So there are different people that are, so Fatima said parents, women, and seniors. That's a good list to start off with who is most impacted in communities. Well, if there's a few more, we'll be happy to include them, but now it has a lot of seniors. So yeah, seniors is definitely important, especially when it comes to mobility of walking. Next slide, Maggie. Thank you. Low income. So yeah, so this is a slide that has a list of some underserved populations that we have came up with and are usually left out of the decision-making process. So this includes older adults, as mentioned, youth, people with a disability, people of color, immigrants population where English might not be their first language, and as well as low-income people. There are most likely to be taking public transit, walking and biking in their communities, and they are less likely to have bike and pedestrian infrastructure. And because they are less likely to have bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, you see the opposite, where they are more likely to be in a car crash because of the lack of infrastructure. Thank you, Maggie. So this is a really cool infographic made by Smart Growth America. It shows the safety disparities by income. So it's a good visual of kind of seeing the impacts that not having safe streets are barriers for people walking, biking, and taking other modes of transportation in the communities. So just from this graph, we can see that low-income neighborhoods typically have fewer sidewalks, crosswalks, and other safety features compared to high-income neighborhoods. So just looking at the data, you can see that the blue graph is consisted of the high-income neighborhoods, people generally that make over $50,000 or more in their household income. And then the green represents the low-income neighborhoods, where generally the household income averages a little bit under $45,000. So just from looking at the data, we can see that from sidewalks, almost 90% of sidewalks in high-income neighborhoods are there. And then when you look at low-income neighborhoods, you have about 50% of the streets having sidewalks. So you can see the clear disparity in how infrastructure is between a high-income neighborhood and a low-income neighborhood. And it's seen the same way when you look at lighting, at 75% for streets in high-income neighborhoods, and then almost 50% of streets having lighting in low-income neighborhoods. And the same way goes with crosswalks, where you have almost a double in high-income neighborhoods for infrastructure, and then traffic calming, where you do have the double of 8% compared to 3% between the high-income and low-income neighborhoods. And as mentioned, you can see that due to this systemic underinvestment or years of disinvestment on these communities, people who are walking in low-income communities are more likely to be struck and killed by drivers. And the same can be said for bicycling as well. Next slide. So here are some questions to think about when you're working with your community engagement project. So how does this project address equity? Who does this project benefit, and who does it harm? And as well as, how does this project impact people of color and low-income communities? So these are, if you can answer these kind of 4 bullet points, you have a good foundation for how to get started with your community engagement plan. Next slide. So why is it important putting together a community engagement plan? For one, it'll help you build strong partnerships. You definitely want to be as inclusive with your community engagement plan and try to have an outreach to as many partnerships in the community as possible. and as well as lifting up the voices of underrepresented people. So you definitely want to include your low-income people, your elderly, the youth, whenever you're doing any community outreach. And then building together a community engagement plan. So what does this look like? Next slide. So these are 4 bullet points you can start when you're creating your community engagement plan. So for number 1, start brainstorming who your stakeholders are. You want to get a broad range of stakeholders, people that generally attend the meeting and people who generally don't attend the meeting. And you want to be learning about their work. There's a lot to be learned from. They have a lot of insight, whether that's local knowledge or working in the community for a number of years. They have recommendations that they could probably provide that they've been trying to get done in the community. And then number 2, identify contact information. As I mentioned, you want to reach out to as many people as possible. You could do that through word of mouth, emails, social media, Google searching people or organizations. And then number 3 is determine questions you like to ask. So maybe having like an online survey with a few questions, kind of detailing what are some of the challenges, opportunities with the project that you're working on. That's a good start. And number 4, it's very important to reach out. You want to be reaching out to as many people as possible with your community engagement plan and making sure that you are connecting, listening, and learning from what others have to say. And there are a couple of barriers to keep in mind when it comes to community engagement that prevent people from attending who would like to attend the community engagement process. So some of these barriers include lack of internet access, language barrier, vision or hearing impairment, and childcare needs. So if these are some of the barriers that you encounter when working on a community engagement plan, maybe come up with some ways that you can reach out to people who encounter these barriers, maybe through a follow-up email or having a live recording of the presentation. That way you could share it with people after the meeting. And then this is kind of more limited. So if you do have the resources, it's important to compensate people for their time and participation in the community engagement process. This could be done through gift cards donated from a local business, in-kind support, or writing community partners into the grant. That way they are involved for their participation. And then I will be handing it back to Maggie.
All right, thanks, Alex. So we're just going to go through those 4 steps that Alex just spoke about, and I think this is an opportunity to get out some paper and a pen and brainstorm what makes sense in your community and just try to get some ideas down there for where you can start. But one place, one thing to where you can get started is find out what are your community's demographics. What is looking at race, ethnicity, looking at age. Our Metropolitan Planning Organization, if you're in the Chicagoland region, CMAP, they have some great data online. It's community snapshots report, and they have a report for every municipality in our region. And it's the most recent data available. So you can look up what your demographics look like. And then once you have an idea of who is in your community, just think about, are there any groups that you know of that are advocating for the groups that you identified? And now we're gonna just talk through about like some different ideas of groups that you might think about. Like, do any of these groups exist in your community? So we have a worksheet that you can fill out if you want to continue this brainstorming process that we'll send out later, and we'll put it on our website. But just thinking through, are there any places of worship in your community that you might reach out to? Are there any senior spaces or clubs or groups? Are there any disability advocacy groups? What about thinking to schools? What does your school district and your school system look like in your community? Are there any parent groups, like a parent-teacher association? And then just, are there any special interest clubs? And then are there any other community-based organizations that you might think of? In addition to groups, think through, are there any community events, festivals that happen in your community that you can perhaps tap into and see what other groups are involved in those events, or just an event to attend to meet more people. So this is these are just ideas to help you get started on brainstorming, because we know every community is different. And some other kind of categories of groups to think about: any groups working on health issues, because health and transportation, active transportation, really go together. Often you can find that there can be a lot of mutual support between these groups. But is there a hospital in your community, or your region, your county? Any clinics, health clinics, community centers, YMCAs? And then thinking about food access, so food pantries. So these are just some other groups to put in your list. So you have a nice comprehensive list of all of the different groups that have connections to people in your community. And then other stakeholders, and I see Mikey, I just saw that in the chat. So homeowners associations, so neighborhood groups, getting them involved can be it can be a really useful step to reaching more people. Is there a chamber of commerce, or that's a great connection to the business community, or any other kind of business development, economic development group? Colleges, schools, universities. Often, actually, you can find a lot of volunteers. If there's a school, college, university, like some very enthusiastic volunteers who might be interested in walking, biking, transit issues. And are there any other bicycle advocates, or maybe a bike club that you might tap into? Environmental organizations, that's also walking, biking, transit goes hand in hand with those concerned about the environment. Any public safety groups, walking clubs, also larger employers. So like we could go on and on, but we felt like these are some groups that are just that might not be on your radar initially, but really just taking that time to brainstorm and get a big list of all the different community groups can really help you reach out. So once you have started your list, and you can keep adding to that list as you keep learning about new groups and individuals, it's the next step is finding the right contact person. So this can involve, like, sometimes the easiest way to get started with that is do a Google search, and you might find a website or a Facebook group that can help you connect to that group or to an individual. LinkedIn can be a great source for connecting to certain individuals. Your next door page. And while you're identifying contact information, you might end up finding even more groups that you weren't even on your radar initially. And then looking at your local newspaper, you might learn about some new groups there, but also find contact information. And looking at newsletters. So different groups like schools or elected officials often have regular newsletters that you can sign up for. And you might see who's involved in those newsletters and reach out directly to the newsletters or to the groups that are issuing those newsletters. And then finally, just asking your own personal network. That's often the easiest place to start. Like, ask, do you know any of these people? Like, I have this huge list of potential groups I might reach out to and like see if they're interested in getting involved in advocating for walking or biking. Do you know any of these groups? Because having a personal connection can really help. So I'll turn it back over to Alex to kind of review questions, like if you end up meeting with any of these groups or an individual one-on-one, some questions you might ask.
Yeah, thanks, Maggie. So some questions to ask definitely is get to know them and find out about their work. As I mentioned, it's they definitely, people who have been working in the community for many years have a lot of insight and probably could bring up recommendations that have already been mentioned and brought up by the community, and working together with the community engagement plan to highlight some of those recommendations and put them up as key recommendations for future projects. Asking for, also another question is asking for feedback about your efforts. This could include what do they think about your transportation ideas and priorities? Do they have any concerns or suggestions with the priorities? Are there opportunities to work together to support each other's work? That's important because you definitely want to be mutual with with who you are connecting with and doing partnerships with, making sure that both your works are aligning together and having a common goal of improving the community and hearing their voices, as well as how would their members like to be kept informed. You definitely want to keep involving people throughout the process, not just the first meeting, but keeping them involved with next steps as well. Do they recommend other groups or individuals for you to contact? As mentioned, it's always great to have more people invited into the participation part of the community engagement. The more people, the better, and the more voices you get to hear out. So, and once again, bringing it out if it's possible, compensating people for their time and participation. It's an important way of getting an increased participation, and especially from people who generally aren't able to attend the meetings or generally haven't attended a meeting before, but would like to learn more about the community engagement process and be involved with their community plans. So number 4, again, is reaching out. Part of the community engagement process is reaching out to as many people as you can, making sure that you are staying connected with them, listening to what they have to say, and then learning from the work that they do and the work that they would like to see be improved in the community that they are working for. Get started by reaching out to one new group. That's kind of a simple start, but reaching out to one new group could lead to having many more connections down the line. And it's important to just keep reaching out with not just one group, but going from one group to another. And building relationship takes time. So it's important that you are taking the time to kind of connect with people and building on the relationships for any future work that goes on beyond the community engagement plan. Other ideas could be attending a community event, maybe an existing community meeting that's already being done by elected official, community organizations, a park district, for example, and that's a good opportunity to meet new people, have them be part of the plan and have their input voiced in as well. Another idea is creating an online survey, especially during COVID. Community engagement isn't really being done in person as much. So an online survey is a good way to kind of have reach out to people and have them be supportive, especially if they can attend a meeting during a set time. So it's a good way to keep people involved and have more people be part of the survey. So one thing that me and Maggie worked on is the Lake Calumet feasibility trail study. And we did an online survey and we got almost close to 300 responses for the survey. So that's a good way to show that people are interested in the project and want to be involved. So it's a good way to move forward using online surveys with any community engagement project working in the future. And Google, go for it, Maggie.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say with that Lake Calumet project that Alex and I have been working on. So that's in kind of the south, like Lake Calumet, south, right, like on the southern border of Chicago. And we have a lot of connections to different community groups in that area. And because of them, really, we were able to get 300 people taking this survey. And that's really meaningful information to have as we start looking for funding for this project, so we can actually get a trail built across Lake Calumet. Just showing that there are a lot of people like directly in that area who really support the project.
Thanks, Maggie. And finishing it off, Google Forms to collect input about your efforts. So Google Forms is a good way to just collect what you've been hearing from different people. Where do people get local community news? So that could come from local media, websites, social media, listservs, village halls, events, and public libraries as well. Ooh, so we have come to the end of our presentation.
So if anyone has any questions about this or just has any experiences themselves of reaching out to different groups and have anything to share, we'd love to hear from you, or if you have any advice.
You can feel free to unmute yourself as well if you want to share.
But you're also always welcome to reach out to us if you want to talk through any of this, or if you just are looking for support or help with any advocacy efforts you're working on. Our emails are there, and we'll make sure to send everyone this community engagement worksheet that we built that you can use to and fill out and as you're brainstorming, and to try to get a nice list of community groups and individuals in your community.
Say, Maggie?
Yeah?
If we go to the website looking for that worksheet, what's the title?
It's actually not up there yet. I forgot to put it up there. We just built it. So I'm going to initially email it to you all, and then I'm going to put it on the Bike Walk Every Town webpage.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's been a great week. Your hard work is paying off, and thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, Bill. It's been a super fun week, and very just inspiring to know so many people care about walking, biking, and transit in our region and are doing a lot of great things. So thank you for being here and all the work you do in Downers Grove.
Another thought would be, when you're reaching out, maybe have some data already available so that you can state that, look, this has some need. We see this usage here. It needs to be extended.
Yeah, for sure. Like having just some materials to show like what you're interested in, having some visuals, that's always helpful too. But yeah, thanks, Mikey. That's a good point.
Good point, Mikey. As well as kind of including existing conditions of the community that you're working on is also another great way of being prepared for community engagement and being able to discuss with the residents or whoever you're speaking to what is the current layout.
All right, well, I think we can probably wrap up. So you have a little break. We have, just a reminder, at 2, we have the session with Christopher Burke Engineering, Ask an Engineer. So if you have any burning questions for an engineer, definitely join that session. But thank you all for joining today for this session, and we'll get that community engagement worksheet out to you soon. So
thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Mikey. Bye.